Hello, everyone. My name is Josh Phillips, and I decided to do my project here on the telephone. So I'll go ahead and get started here. Um, so I'll do a little bit of history before I get into the telephone. So before the telephone was actually invented, the only way to communicate with people over any sort of distance was actually through the use of a device called the telegraph. And this device came about in the mid 1830s, and it used a system called Morse code that consisted of um, either beeps or taps or different sounds that could be deciphered into words if you knew the code. And this was really the only way, other than actually physically writing something on paper or telling someone face to face. If you wanted to communicate them, this was this was the only way to actually get your message across. And so this posed a pretty big issue, especially if you wanted to actually have a voice conversation with somebody. And so in the mid 1850s to early 1860s, some early innovators began to start of process ideas for a new device that resembled the modern day telephone. But it wasn't until the year of 1876 that Alexander Graham Bell actually was the first to receive the patent for his version of the telephone as we know today. And so his version of the telephone here, I have a picture, included a mouthpiece here that one would talk into, called a transmitter. And it would be received through this receiver here, an earphone, that would reproduce the sound of someone's voice at a distant location. And so this was definitely a big breakthrough in communication. And it was widely accepted by people everywhere once they heard about it. And so as we go into the history here, here's the original one by Alexander Graham Bell. But as we see into even the late 30s and early 40s, this telephone became a very common household item as it became more and more accessible to more and more people. What once was very, very hard to come by for the average person, soon, like I said, found its way into almost every household here. And it really shaped the way that society communicated with one another, because it allowed for almost instant communication, rather than if you had relatives in a different state or a different even side of town. It could take days or for a letter to be delivered, or they'd have to decipher code that you sent to them, which not everyone had a telegraph by all means. And so as we see into 1992 here, when the actual cell phone was brought to the market, wasn't widely accepted at first until soon after, when almost everyone nowadays, I know this is a little outdated here, but almost everyone has a cell phone on them. And like I said, nowadays we really can't be without our cell phones, as it has shaped our society into a kind of mobile device society here. And as we go to the next slide, here's just the advancements that we've come to in just or the telephone in general, but here in more specific, the cell phone. And just a funny thought to think that after such an impact that the telephone has had on society, it's funny to think that most people nowadays fail to even answer majority of their calls, but the impact that the telephone had on society is definitely apparent through our history.